Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It's an honor for me to present before you, and I feel commitment at the same time, so I'm a little nervous, so excuse me, please. Topic for my presentation is federalism and political issues. Federalism and the political scene cannot be separated. Federalism and politics are intertwined. In the former also constitute a research topic in political sciences. In a broader sense, it also refers to the process of association or integration to several units into a certain whole or a union. Such a whole can take various forms. It can be association of the territory, an association of the political entity, a society, states, and the like. The political interconnections is then apparent both in the institutional and the functional aspects, and the special functioning of political and state institutions. Similarly, the institutions of the European Union arise from the political basis. Primary political interconnections is inherent in the European Council and the Council of the European Union. The only European Union body having a direct political mandate from the citizens of the EU member states in the European Parliament is the European Parliament. However, secondary political interconnectedness can be found in all major EU bodies. The aim of the contribution is to examine the interconnectedness of the political sphere and federalism as a result of integration in selected and in some way borderline aspects of the constitutional level, with an emphasis on the supranational framework of the European Union. The examined level is definitely wide-ranging, what is why we shall focus our attention only on those aspects that piqued our interest, especially in connection with the Slovak Republic's experiences with federalism. It generalized to a certain extent. A parallel with the current political situation in the European Union can be discerned. The basic question on this context is then determination of the degree of influence on the political elite on federalism, the answer to which necessitates exploration of the topics at several levels, namely influence of the political scene at the birth of federalism, influence of the political scene during the life of federalism, and influence of the political scene upon the demise of federalism. Drawing for examples of individual stages experienced in the Slovak Republic, we won't point out the danger of underestimating the impact of political context in the European Union. Unsuccessful ratification of the treaty establishing a constitution for Europe, or Brexit, which began with a referendum, showed that the political elite in the state can have a very significant impact on decision-making processes related to state law issues. Under the political elite, we mean representatives of the political spectrum, especially from the ruling, but also from the opposition political parties, as long as they are in a position to actually influence public opinion. Nationalism versus functionality. As a part of the federal state, the Slovak Republic's history is not long. From Czechoslovakia's founding in 1918, it was part of a unitary state. Originally, territorial units, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and the Carpathian Ruthenia, were to be equal, which was reflected in the symbols of the state, especially in the state coat of arms or in the national anthem. The barrier of the sovereignty of the new state became the united Czechoslovakian nation. State citizenship in the Czechoslovak Republic was conceived as the only one and uniform. Constitutional existence of two independent nations, also in a way close to each other, in the form of a unitary statehood, brought subsequent problems. On the other hand, it must be said that this historical journey together enriched, developed, and helped to overcome the obstacles of historical development in Europe. As part of the adoption of the Constitution in 1848, in the post-war period, as process of centralization began, marked by a suppression of any federalist tendencies. Although the Constitution declared the autonomy of the Slovak nation, autonomy sui generis, institutionally, however, the model of a unitary state with an asymmetrical arrangement was confirmed. This means that in addition to the Czechoslovak authorities, it incurred the existence of Slovak national authorities with limited autonomy, but it did not incur any Czech national authorities. The Slovak national authorities had only very limited competence and were essentially full dependent on the Czechoslovak authorities, in particular on the Czechoslovak government. This model formally persisted until the adoption of the constitutional law on the Slovak Federation. On October 27, the National Assembly adopted a constitutional law, number 143, from year 1968, Statutes on the Czechoslovak Federation, which established the so-called dual entity federation on a national basis. The reason for creation of the federation was endued dissatisfaction of Slovakia in a unitary state, but the political spectrum of Slovakia was already strong enough to try implementing the changes in question in the spirit of social internationalism. Socialist internationalism. The process of federation formation was greatly influenced by the political events of August 21st, 1968. The territory of Czechoslovakia was occupied by Soviet troops and other Allied armies, which ended the ongoing process of reform. Political context in the function of the federation. However, the political situation in the country was not conducive to real practice of federalism. The process of the so-called normalization began. The main feature of which was significant centralization of political and state power. Federalism was only a matter of a formal statesman. The constitutions of the Republic required by the constitutional law on the Czechoslovak Federation were not adopted. Federalization elements were increasingly weakened by both legal and functional means, which translated into a strongly unitarized federation. While each of the two republics had its own legislative body and its own government, the specific principle of prohibition of forming a majority applied. Nonetheless, it considered of the fact that when voting of certain law, the consent of the majority or the constitutional majority of representative elected in the Czechoslovak Republic and the majority of representative elected in the Slovak Republic was required. The political influence of the time was very strong. The Czechoslovak Federation was established at the time when it could not rely on satisfactory internal and external political and democratic conditions and found itself more or less alone in the midst of the other suspected reform action. And some political influences in the demise of the Federation. Fundamental changes in the context of dysfunctional federalism occurred after the events on the so-called Velvet Revolution in November 1989. It was a transition from totalitarian socialist statehood model to the formation of a modern democratic states governed by the rule of law. Yet the issue of the state law arrangement continued to resonate, especially on the part of Slovak representatives. The second half of 1990, competence law, it strengthened the position of the national republics in the area of foreign policy, defense and the other important economic areas, and extended the power of the republic's authorities in adopting federal laws. Crucial decisions remained in the hand of the federal authorities. Initiated by the President of the Republic, Václav Havel, in the first half of 1991, several meetings of official representatives of the Federation and the republics and representative of coalition, later also the most important opposition political parties, were held in order to resolve the fundamental question of the constitutional system of the Czechoslovak Republic, the question of the state law arrangement. Many concepts have been put forward, from the completely unitarian of the one hand through the concept of federalism, federation and confederation to the concept of complete sovereignty and independence of a republic on the other. This only confirmed the complexity of the issue raised and the diversity of competing views on its resolution. The political parties, the Movement for Democratic Slovakia in Slovakia and the Civic Democratic Party in the Czech Republic won in the parliamentary election held in 1992. Neither of these political parties had the split of the federation on their election agenda. Divergent views on the state law arrangement proved irreconcilable. Negotiations to maintain a common state have not been resumed by these political parties, and they have not been able to find a recourse for agreement. So room for the concept of constituting separate sovereign republics emerged. And some European consequences. The European Union is not a typical textbook example of federalism. First of all, it lacks a state law basis, and international treaties continue to be its primary law. Also absent is the voluntary component of the member states that established the international organization and entrusted its sovereignty only to this limited extent. In fact, it shows signs that give rise to controversy in the area of the state's law. Examining the political context, it can be stated that the tendencies toward federalism will be directly proportional to the political representatives of individual states. In the simplest of terms, the political spectrum of the European Union can be explained as to be from little identifiable to unidentifiable. When in year 2001, work began on the treaty establishing a constitution for Europe, which was to create constitution of the European Union. The political elite of the European Union envisageable this treaty a success. On the other hand, the political spectrum also lives its own political life in the European Union. This is, however, the case only in the context of the composition of the European Parliament, and that to a limited extent. The upcoming election to the European Parliament in 2024, even with increased mandates, may change this political spectrum, which, however, can never be created solely from the position of the European Union itself. It will always be a reflection of the political forces on individual states. Although the subsequent formulation in political factions is already modifiable in a way. However, the fundamental power of the political spectrum lies in the representatives of the executive power in the member states, mainly through the European Council and the Council of the European Union. The current political arena in individual member states may consist of several levels. The so-called three-component system in the case of federal member states, Germany, Austria, or two-component system in the case of unitary member states. Of the policy instruments, referendum may play an important role, which is, in the case of federal member states, can be implemented at three levels: the federal, the states, and the local ones. A certain proportion between the exercise of political power in the state and increasing centralization has the possibility to hinder any unambiguously efforts that would threaten the current position of the member states. Clear signals of satisfaction or dissatisfaction unambiguously manifest themselves in, for example, unexpected non-acceptance of documents of a fundamental nature. Despite the above, I consider it important to draw attention to the danger of the factual level of federation, which had no support in the legal system, both in the negative sense of the word on the above-mentioned example of the Czechoslovak Federation. When the federation did exist legally, except that on the real level it did not. Still the same, if not greater danger, is identifiable in the opposite case. If there is no federation from the legal point of view, but it shows real elements of federalism. So in conclusion, I would like to point out that all the characteristic features of federation, divided sovereignty, dual constitution, dual citizenship, dual system of state body, etc., are always perceived in correlation with the current political system of the federation. Thus, for example, the long-term dominant position of one or more parties without appropriate dialogue leads over time to the de facto emptying of the institutes of the federation. For example, Czechoslovak, Russian, etc. If the leading political parties promote centralization of federation, it results in the weakening of the member states' autonomy, regardless of the number of powers entrusted to them by federal constitution. Strengthening the federation does not have to be implemented directly by changing the federal constitution. It can take place through judicial interpretation, but also in a lightened way by promoting cooperation in two levels in all areas. This leads to an increase bureaucratization, a loss of clarity, competences, ultimately strengthening of centralization tendencies. What actually depends grassroots integration in a functional way? The broader context of the historical interpretation of constitutional sciences shows that some models of constitutional relations are repeated. Therefore, it is necessary to examine the experiences of the past because they can be instructive and useful in the present as well. The possibility of the member states leaving the European Union can also be perceived in this concept. legal relations from the past, which were considered done deals, have been reopened due to the impact of Brexit, for example, and require updating. Some interesting note. From the historical perspective, it is noteworthy that the Federal Assembly, elected as the Parliament of Czechoslovak Federation, decided on the dissolution of this federation on the dissolution of itself. From the political point of view, undoubtedly exceeded the legitimacy of the election agendas of political parties, on the basis of which the elections were held in 1992, and which, with one exception, this was agenda of the Slovak National Party, the dissolution of Czechoslovakia was not mentioned at all. So, thank you for your attention.